so here we're building a Dick Ealy Firecracker. It's from an old set of model airplane news, and it's being built for vintage B team racing to the Dayton, Ohio rules. So vintage B, it's a full, sorry I can't move this, that's already glued. It's a full fuselage racer, and we race them on 60-foot lines using any baffled piston design of the era. It's McCoy 29 rear rotor. So, Pete Babigan had laser cut me most of the kit for this, a short kit. So I'm starting to build it. Notice which side of the line you pick to draw on for the laser cutting to start with. But hey, for a first cut of this kit, it ain't bad. So, after trimming them up, that one's already gluing. I'd already glued up the doubler to the motor mount, and you can't see it in here, but you'll notice that if you do choose to build one of these, the maple doubler is an odd size, so hopefully you have a planer. Luckily I quietly stole one from my father. So if you'll notice, here's the engine, that's the thrust line going down the model. When we look closer, we can see this gap coming over to here. This is where the doubler sits. It actually sits an 1/8 inch down from the fuselage side. So I marked it, but I don't really trust just marking it. So that's kind of the point of this part of the video, to show you the way I cooked up to be able to hold everything nice and square and straight. That will fit on something like that. Biggest thing is you need a glue with a lot of working time, especially for doublers and when they're offset, crazy stuff to worry about. Don't try and do this with 5-minute epoxy. It's just not going to work for you. Definitely use at least 30-minute epoxy. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to mix the epoxy, and then I will get to gluing that. No reason for you to watch me mix epoxy, so I'll be right back. Okay, so now we're ready to start spreading the epoxy. Like I was saying, a long working time epoxy is best, and always make sure that you get it mixed up as good as you can. So I'm going to start on the doubler first because it's a little easier. I can hold it in my hand. Do not, under any circumstances, just slather it on, push it together. One of the key things with epoxy is you're always going to wind up clamping the parts together somehow, either pressing them down like we're doing here, or using woodworking clamps, or whatever sort of method you manage to cook up. Always have that ready before you start, and it's 5 minutes well spent. Anyways, the other thing to remember with epoxy is the thinner it's on, the better. Big globs of epoxy, it's just plastic. It's not going to hold all that well. What you're relying on is it works through a mechanical system, but getting down into the wood, and then that's actually holding together. Any good adhesive, the substrate is going to break well before the actual adhesive does. So there's no reason to put a ton on, because if you're weighting it down, it's all going to squirt out anyways, and just makes later steps that much nice and neater. And it's heavy. We're building a racer here, so weight is a big part of our concern, just like you would have in stunt or anything like that, because we need to worry about, in this class, accelerating out of the pits, getting up to speed. Fuel mileage is a big part of the vintage B. In particular, the way the rules are written, it's an 80 lap qualifier. You have to make at least one stop, and in the event that there's a bunch of traffic, because everybody wants to pit early or pit at lap 40 halfway through or whatever, you need to make sure that your model can go the distance in the event that traffic gets a little bit weird. So we got it spread nice and thin on there. We'll do the same on the fuselage side. This side being a little tougher because we have that 1/8 inch drop that we got to take into account, along with this back edge in the fuselage where the doubler meets up on it. There's still formers and things like that to go in later, so if we take our time here, we're nice and neat about it, we don't have to fix it later. This is one of those, what is it, ounce of prevention, a pound of cure things. And the way these fuselage sides are cut, I think that the opening is going to wind up being a little bit bigger than the wing itself. So I left the doublers a little oversized to go down into the wing area a little bit, and I'll file and sand and all that when it comes time to actually fit the wing. And again, looking for that mechanical bond, so I didn't want to make the doubler same size as the fuselage side, because then it may not have been touching the wing, and that is bad. I apologize for rambling. And hopefully the light's not doing anything weird and you can kind of see how the epoxy is spreading. Almost all the way up the nose, being careful of that 1/8 inch top I was talking about. Okay. Call that good enough. Let's see if I don't know if you can see how that's nice and evenly wetted, but it's not dripping off or anything. Same on this piece. Alright, so now this is how I figure how to get this all lined up. Using some 1, 2, 3 blocks, put the former, or I'm sorry, the fuselage side up against it. This was a lot easier before. Started getting a tad sticky. And then you can see how I got things already kind of lined out as a rough outline. And then double checking that that's up there nice and tight, which it looks like it is. These front edges line up. Make sure that those are on there. Feels pretty good. And then a piece of 1/8 inch sheet balsa. Drop it down. Pinch it together. Keeping weight on the fuselage side so it hopefully doesn't move around on us. Okay, so that's on there. Gently lift that out of the way. Weight it down. Hopefully without moving anything. Press the whole assembly without it moving. Okay, and then another 1, 2, 3 block. And there you go. Hang on 1 second and we'll take a look at the lining on there. There's that 1/8 inch line I was talking about for the top one. Also doubling as our thrust line. And then a little tougher to see on this one because of the shadow, but I promise it's there. You can see it going out the back. Then, I don't know if I can get you in there. Our front edge is nice and lined up on both of them. So hopefully this is nice and straight, and we can flip this over and start doing our front fuse box, I guess you could call it, formers, so we can start making this look like an airplane. Okay, we got these all done and glued up. So here's what I'm talking about. With epoxy, remember how I was stressing, get it on nice and thin on both sides. That way you get a nice thin layer between them. You don't want big globs of epoxy holding stuff together, because it's just plastic is really what epoxy is. So best way I can think to describe it is if you were to glue your hands together with epoxy, all right, and you line it up like this. You got all the big gaps between your fingers, and there's some amount of resistance there, but eventually it does just slip. But if you start down in tight, everything's lined up, and there's a lot more resistance because everything's mechanically locked in. That's what's happening with the epoxy. It's trying to go through the wood grains down a little bit and hold on to itself. So the other big thing about that is you're essentially trying to keep the molecule chains as short as possible, so that you're not applying, even though it's in shear, it turns into a torque, you know, so it breaks it out. So I don't know if I can show this. We can see how just a little bit oozes out. One, keeps it cleaner for continuing on from here, making life a lot easier, because we have components that need to go down in here. See, just small little shiny bit where it just oozed out just a little. And see if maybe we can get here on the wing too. Just a little bit in the wing opening. So that lets me know I put it on just about perfectly. You know, a little heavy in the front. We got a little bit oozing out, kind of a lot, but whatever. We can sand that off. That's fine. It's not a huge, gigantic mess, which is exactly what we were going for. So I'll get it cleaned up, and then we'll continue on from there.